Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Manachari Jamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading 3rd Canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 26, Fundamental Principles of Material Nature, Text 31. Tajasani Indriyani Eva Kriya Jana Vibhagasaha Pranasa Hi Kriya Sakti Buddhi Vijnana Saktita Tajansa Sindriyani Eva Kriya Jnana Vibhagasaha Pranasa Hi Kriya Saktir Buddhir Vijnana Saktita Taja Sentindriyani Eva Kriya Jnana Vibhagasaha Pranasa Hi Kriya Saktir Buddhir Vijnana Saktita Taisa Sindriyani Eva Kriya Jnana Vibhagasaha Pranasa Hi Kriya Saktir Buddhir Vijnana Saktita
Taisa Indriyani Eva
Taisani
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Buddhir Vijnana Shaktita
Buddhir Vijnana Saktita
Taijasan Indriyanyeva
Tarsandriyani
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Buddhir Vijnana Shaktita
Buddhir Vijnana Saktita
Taijasan Indriyanyeva
Taijasandrina Eva
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Buddhir Vijnana Shaktita
Buddhir Vijnana Saktita
Daya Sandriya Didyadini
Chandriyani Eva
Kriya Jana Vivakasa
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Pranasayahi Kriya Saktir
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Vadaya Vijana Saktita
Buddhir Vijnana Saktita
Taicha Sangnir Intriyani Eva
Taisariyani Eva
Kriya Jnana Vibhakasa
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Pranasaya hi Kriya Shaktir
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Buddhe Vijnana Shaktita
Buddhir Vijnana Saktita
Okay, online.
Taijasan Indriyanyeva
Taijasan Indriyanyeva
Kriya Jnana Vibhagasha Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Buddhir Vijnana Shaktita
Buddhir Vijnana Shaktita
Taijasan Indriyaneva
Taijasan Indriyanyeva
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir
Buddhi Vijnana Shaktita
Buddhir Vijnana Shaktita Okay, I guess that's it.
Taisani
Taijani
produced from egoism and the mode of passion.
produced from egoism and the mode of passion.
Indriyani
Indriyani,
senses.
the senses.
Eva
Eva, certainly.
Kriya action. Jnana knowledge.
Knowledge.
Vibhagashaha
Taijasha,
according to Pranasya of the vital energy. He, indeed, Kriya Shakti, the senses of action. Buddhi, of the intelligence. Vijnana Shaktita, the senses for acquiring knowledge. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Egoism and the mode of passion produces two kinds of senses. The senses for acquiring knowledge and the senses of action. The senses of action depend on the vital energy, and the senses for acquiring knowledge depend on intelligence. It has been explained in the previous verse that the mind is the product of ego and goodness, and that the function of the mind is acceptance and rejection according to desire. But here intelligence is said to be the product of ego in passion. That is the distinction between mind and intelligence. Mind is a product of egoism and goodness, and intelligence is a product of egoism and passion. The desire to accept something and reject something is a very important factor of the mind. Since mind is a product of the mode of goodness, if it is fixed upon the Lord of the mind, Aniruddha, then the mind can be changed to Krishna consciousness. It is stated by Narottam Das Thakur that we always have desires. Desire cannot be stopped. But if we transfer our desires to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the perfection of life. As soon as the desire is transferred to lording it over material nature, it becomes contaminated by matter. Desire has to be purified. In the beginning, this purification process has to be carried out by the order of the spiritual master, since the spiritual master knows how the disciples' desires can be transformed into Krishna consciousness. As far as intelligence is concerned, it is clearly stated here that it is a product of egoism in passion. By practice, one comes to the point of the mode of goodness, and by surrendering or fixing the mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes a very great personality, or a Mahatma. In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said, Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha, such a great soul is very rare. In this verse, it is clear that both kinds of senses, the senses for acquiring knowledge and the senses for action, are products of egoism in the mode of passion. And because the sense organs for activity and for acquiring knowledge require energy, the vital energy or life energy is also produced by egoism in the mode of passion. We can actually see, therefore, that those who are very passionate can improve in material acquisition very quickly. It is recommended in the Vedic scriptures that if one wants to encourage a person in acquiring material possessions, one should also encourage him in sex life. We naturally find that those who are addicted to sex life are also materially advanced, because sex life or passionate life is the impetus for the material advancement of civilization. For those who want to make spiritual advancement, there is almost no existence of the mode of passion. Only the mode of goodness is prominent. We find that those who engage in Krishna consciousness are materially poor. But one who has eyes can see who is the greater. Although he appears to be materially poor, a person in Krishna consciousness is not actually a poor man. But the person who has no taste for Krishna consciousness and appears to be very happy with material possessions is actually poor. Persons infatuated by material consciousness are very intelligent in discovering things for material comforts, but they have no access to understanding the spiritual soul and spiritual life. Therefore, if anyone wants to advance in spiritual life, he has to come back to the platform of purified desire. The purified desire for devotional service, as stated in the Narada Pancharatra, engagement in service of the Lord when the senses are purified in Krishna consciousness is called pure devotion. Yeah, so there it is right there. We kind of mentioned that a lot. We're coming to the process of the point of engaging in devotional service with purified senses of mind. And here Prabhupada says that that's called pure devotion. So, and Prabhupada was saying that he was saying the religionists, the psychologists, the philosophers, the scientists, they do not understand the subtle functions of the mind and the intelligence. The subtle sciences of the subtle functions of the body. So in the previous verses, Prabhupada was talking about how the mind is produced from the mode of goodness, and the body, it's when it's conceived, it first it appears like the form of a pea, and so the body develops according to the according to the three modes of material nature, the desire and the karma of the living entity. And so, the economists, they were saying that they're good employees, the good workers are those persons who have families, because they have a lot at stake. They have their family, so they'll do anything, right, to maintain their job or do anything for the company, even if it's illegal, to continue to maintain their family, right? So they don't want to lose that. So that point here was stress. For economic development, then sex life should be stressed. 'Cause it makes an attachment. You have to get stuff. Well, basically, that was another thing too. So, let's see, because how did we get on that point? Bhakti Vikas Swami, he was talking on this verse. I heard it a few times. I was listening to it again today. He was talking about like specific impetuses of what you have to have for family life, right? So yeah, you have to have griha, you have to have money, you have to the children, the cow, right? The nice, beautiful clothes and clothing and ornaments and jewelry, right? Nice palatable food. So yeah, there's certain things that are required. Household paraphernalia. And then the Krishna consciousness person, he may, who's situated in the mode of goodness, he's may appear to be materially poor. Prabhupada was saying here that actually he's actually the greater person. So when the mind is controlled, and then mind, the Lord of the mind, Aniruddha, one can develop Krishna consciousness in the mode of goodness. And Prabhupada, he was stating that even Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, he was telling Krishna that he thinks that he was declining to perform the Hatha Yoga system because he was saying that to control the mind is difficult, more difficult to control the wind. So Prabhupada was saying, so even Arjuna, such a great personality, he's telling Krishna that he can't control his mind. Right? That's what he said. But Arjuna and Kshatriya, they're in the mode of passion anyways. They're not meant for going to the forest like the Brahmanas and performing the Ashtanga Yoga system, controlling the mind, fixing the mind on Super Soul. Although they did know how to do these things. They did know how to practice yoga and meditation. And Prabhupada was also talking about Maharaj Ambrish, the verse Savai Mana Krishna Pada Vindayor Vahamsi. So there's a whole list there. Said King Ambrish, he used his working senses, his legs, for walking to the temple of the Lord. Right, and he used the sense of smell for smelling the flowers and the tulsi offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. And he used his tongue for tasting the prasad offered to the Lord. So in this way, all of his senses, he used his mind for thinking about the pastimes, activities, and the form of the Lord. And he was such a great devotee that even a great mystic, Durvasa Muni, had... Ambrish Maharaj had defeated Durvasa Muni very simply, very easily, just by his devotional service. When Durvasa Muni tried to insult Durvasa Muni, and when Durvasa Muni tried to insult Ambrish Maharaj, then just on a small technicality, the Lord sent his Sudarshan chakra after Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni created a big giant, I don't know what, a 30-foot giant with molten hair and eyes of fire. Right? So, big fearful demon. He was the color of molten copper. So, and Ambrish Maharaj, he thought that maybe perhaps he may have committed some offense. As Durvasa Muni, he left really quick, and he took a whole year at the speed of mind to actually go to the spiritual planets, go to Narayana Loka, and he asked Narayan to please call up his Sudarshan chakra. And Narayan's going, well, my hands are kind of tied on this because, what is it, Krishna's Bhakti Vilas, right? He's inclined to his devotees. Right, so he said you have to surrender to the lotus feet of the devotee for whom you had offended. Right, so Durvasa Muni again took it was a whole year. Right, so 6 months there and 6 months back, and so he came back and he surrendered to Durvasa, to Ambrish Maharaj. Because Durvasa Muni had many millions of followers, a great mystic yogi, And throughout the Vedas and throughout Mahabharata and Srimad Bhagavatam, the Rasamuni, he kind of seems to be, let's see, Rasikananda, he said this, a recurring villain, right, through the themes of the Vedas. Where he I guess he kind of means well, but he follows. Maharaj mentioned that the Rasamuni had visited Rukmini Dwarkadish, and he had him doing some pretty strange stuff. He hitched him up to a chariot and was swapping with the what do you call it? The switch. Yeah, the lash. Go, go, go. Right, and he gave him some oatmeal and said, "Smear the oatmeal all over your body." He said, "Well, you blew it." I said, "Smear the oatmeal all over your body. You did not smear the oatmeal on the bottoms of your feet." All right. So he had these technicalities on that, and so yeah, one has to be actually very reverential and very respectful when you meet the Supreme Lord. Krishna is inclined to the Brahmanas, and Durvasa Muni is a Brahmana. So Krishna gave him all facility, as a demonstration how one should respect the Brahmanas. Oh yeah, and so the thing that I was trying to think of last week, and I totally forget, because I always totally remember a little bit later on during the day, because I'm trying to jog my mind now. What was it now? But Prabhupada was saying that here in the material world, we're materially contaminated with material consciousness. And so the treatment is chanting Hare Krishna and taking Krishna Prasad, engaging in devotional service. So it's actually the goal is to engage in devotional service with purified senses. So the means is to engage in devotional service to purify our senses. So the means is the goal. So he's saying, just as a doctor, he'll treat a patient for some disease. Okay, now Prabhupada was saying that it's impossible to trace out the history when the living entity came into the material world. So just as the doctor, he treats the disease now, he doesn't try to, and that's another thing I was thinking of, unless it's some obvious thing, like when Lord Jagannath catches a cold, they left the window open when he gave him a bath, right? But if there's no real obvious reason for contracting the disease, right, then there's really no reason, right, to try to find out how the patient got the disease, right? But it's to treat the disease since the patient is infected. Does that make sense? So we came into the material world since time immemorial, so it's not so much important when or how we came into the material world, but the point of the fact is we're contaminating the material world now, right? And so we can treat this materially infected disease now with the process of Harinam, Sankirtan, and the Bhakti Marga. Let's see, so it's still, try to think of anything else. Jog my memory. So are there any questions or topics of discussion? Yeah, you have a question?
This is, thank you for your elaborations on this process of engaging the senses and Krishna service and purification. This is really a very intriguing verse to me in purport. Prabhupada is connecting or elaborating how the intelligence is connected with the mode of passion. And he's talking about how the intelligence can be geared in different ways, and that the mind, because it's by nature and goodness, then it can be trained by the intelligence to naturally flow towards Krishna consciousness. And what I thought was really cool is that at the beginning, it's by the order of the spiritual master, because the living entity, he does not have the intelligence by which to train his own mind to move towards Krishna. Therefore, he needs somebody who can see their consciousness, their behavior, their tendencies, and help them move towards Krishna consciousness. So those were some of the interesting things that I heard here. As far as the question here, there was this topic that got kind of brought up where you mentioned about family life. So Prabhupada mentioned how, when one wants to advance in material possessions, then one is encouraged to take up sex life or have a family. Sex life in the Vedic culture has nothing to do with illicit sex, but it has to do with proper sex. So the idea is that, okay, family, if somebody's interested in material comforts, then they should think about family. So then I thought about one thing, which is that, okay, well, does this mean that all the devotees have to be poor? Or does it mean that the devotee is less advanced if they want material comforts? And could you maybe share some examples?
Well, yeah, we have all those. We're talking about material comforts. We're not talking about like our previous album collection, our car collection in the garage, they wax their cars, their Corvettes, all weekend, all Sunday long, watch the game, put down a few brews, what I mean? Jai Gaura Nitai Ki Jai. So we have the same facilities. What is it? It's the washing machine and the dryer for what we need for our service. Our devotees, brahmacharis, they just hang up their devotees, right? But it's the same facilities, for the grihasta, for the brahmachari, for the sannyas, maybe one ashram is maybe more regulated than the other, but that's really more of a personal nomenclature thing from person to person, whether they're a grihasta, brahmachari, vanaprastha, or sannyas. But Lord Chaitanya says we're none of these things. We're Nitya Swarup Krishna Das, eternal servant of Krishna. We're not grihasta, not brahmachari, sannyas, or vanaprastha, but our actual spiritual soul. But yeah, it's the same facilities, just that what's required, one needs to have their griha, because that's required for family life rather than, you can't raise your family in the brahmachari ashram so easily, right? You need a certain paraphernalia, but it's for the service of the Lord and for bringing the children up in God consciousness, give them like Prabhupada said, they wanted deities. They played with Krishna and Radha dolls. They grew up and they played and imitated the pastimes of the Ramayana and Mahabharata and Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. They said villages in India, even today, they assemble in the evening to hear the topics of Ramayana, Lord Ramachandra, Krishna Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, hear about great devotees like Arjun and Bhima, Nakula and Sahadev, the perils from Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. And then on the way home, they pretend and they play like they're Lord Ramachandra killing the demon in the forest. Right, so they go home and discuss Krishna Katha and enact and play Krishna Katha. And that's what Prabhupada was saying, is that this is a Krishna Katha, not some narrations of some material subject matters. Oh yeah, that's what he's saying. There are heaps and heaps of newspapers, right? He was talking about the priest that visited the coal mines. The Prabhupada said, yeah, I haven't even seen in this country piles and piles of newspapers in front of the door. They have subscribed, right? So they're telling the coal miners about hell. And so, well, do they have the newspapers there? And they go, no. They go, oh, that's horrible. No newspapers. So that's bad. So what is it? It's Bhaktisiddhanta, they were printing some newspapers every day, multiple times a day, in Krishna conscious, Krishna Kata. They said even then, if the news of the spiritual world, it would even be more. This is unlimited, and they're eternal, so there'd even be more newspapers. Said unfortunately, we don't have the customers. So yeah, the intelligence department, just the plan making department, is right next to the mind. So when there's less the intelligence, it works to find out how to get what it wants by making plans. So it's the plan making department. And so then the mind either accepts or rejects. And so that's what they're saying, the same thing under different sets of circumstances, the mind even accepts again what it previously rejected in another set of circumstances. Right? We can all relate to that. I think the example they're giving is like we kind of like change our mind. You know what I mean? Or maybe what is it? Example they're talking about. Sachit Goswami was asking one of the Gurukul children, is Rasabihari, would you be happy if I give you a rascal? I said, okay, good. Would you be happy if I gave you another rascal? You'd be even more happy, right? How about another rascal? Okay, how about 10 rascals? Will you still be happy if something happens, right? Some satiation or something. Satiation of the sugar. Now it's not so palatable. Now they kind of overdosed on sugar, right? Kind of got a little satiated, right? So maybe that could be a good example for that. So the vital energy propels the working senses. So you can kind of figure that working sense: legs, arms, physical labor, right? Lifting things, right? The vital force, right? And so now we're talking about, this is the difference between Sudra and Brahmana, right? Or the workers and the administrators. So we're talking about the intelligence, but in the administrative class, right? Is the thinking is doing the and then what was that one based on? The vital energy. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. The senses for acquiring knowledge depend on intelligence, right? So yeah, that's the subtle nature of the workings of the material body and mind, right? Because you can see that you need to have physical energy to do physical work with your working senses, right? And then exactly what's required is your intelligence for through your senses for acquiring knowledge. So that's sight, taste, touch, sound. Right. So we're putting that all together. Yeah, Maharaj has a statement.
The Brahmins are called lazy intelligent because they're intelligent in that they do the right thing, most important thing. They're lazy intelligent. And the Kshatriyas are active intelligent, very active, and they do the good thing, best thing. Then there's the lazy foolish, that's the Vaishya, because he engages others in working for him to get money. Money, that's foolish. instead of self-realization, where the Brahmins, they use their intelligence for self-realization. And then the Shudra, he's active, foolish. He's compared like a monkey. Monkey is very active, but he's always doing harmful things, disruptive things. So in this way, the four have their divisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, so the Brahma's his intelligence for realizing that it's not better. Those who are ignorant, it's like a monkey. And so then the Vaishya, he's lazy, he employs others for money. Right. And the Kshatriya, they're very, very strong bodily features, what Maharaj to say about their working senses. And so, yeah, so the intelligence of the Brahmana is meant for self-realization such. Prabhupada was stressing Krishna Kata, right, rather than the Gramya Kata, the material world, the heaps and heaps of newspapers, right, hearing about Krishna's service, Krishna's pastimes, his form, his names, the absolute platform. And that was another thing that they're talking about, how when creation takes place, that there's a specific systematic order where each of the elements manifested from the most subtle to the most gross, and they occur simultaneously. So that's a really good detail. There's a structure, right, from first, second, third, right, that it also occurs simultaneously. It's kind of a bit of an evolution, where when we finally get to Earth, it contains all of the qualities of all of the previous subtle material elements. You can hear it, it's got sound, you can feel it, you can taste it, you can smell it, right? So it's like everything all combined all together in the most grossest form. So that makes sense, right? Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions or comments, or maybe we can end class there? You have a question, comment?
So you mentioned this point about we're in the material world. The doctor tries to treat the disease. It's less important how we got it. So would Prabhupada discourage devotees from entertaining elaborate discussions on where we came from and so on and so forth?
Well, there's something like that happened before. There was a book by Narayan Maharaj of the Gaudiya Math. I forget the name of the book. It had kind of a nice kind of a name to it. But it has some sort of science where they're tracing out the history of the living entity coming into the material world, right? And so some of the living entities are described as coming from Mahavishnu, and some of the living entities are described from coming from other lower mode of ignorance, kind of, like lower species, or coming from demigods, or coming from Krishna Loka. So it started becoming a bit of an issue that other persons were superior to other persons. Persons who came from Mahavishnu in the spiritual world more superior to persons who are coming up from animal species, or demigods or something. So basically, ISKCON, the GBC, just plainly put a stop to it and wrote a letter. And they asked Narayan Maharaj, although they knew that he meant well. Narayan Maharaj's feelings kind of seemed to be a little hurt, but they were asking him maybe, take a break on this for a while and to stop utilizing this specific book or this scripture on this specific point. They're saying that it's not really needed to know how we came into the material world, but but that's what Prabhupada was saying. But by the fact that we are in the material world, just like the point of the fact that the patient is diseased, the doctor treats the disease. He doesn't try to find out how he got the disease. So we're treating the material infection, but it's not really needed to know, although that we know that we've been in the material world since time immemorial, probably been through 8,400,000 species millions of times, where our minds are carrying impressions from future, from past lives. So these elements, they're saying that all of the combinations that we perceive in the material world with our senses are all things that have all been seen before. Brother Living Entity, do you have a question or comment? Like that Radhaselli has a question. You want to give him the microphone? Or?
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to share what I heard to see if I heard properly. So can you correct me if I understood wrong? And a question might come of it also. But if I'm understanding like the verse, it's saying that our mind is coming from egoism in the mode of goodness. And then our intelligence is coming from egoism in the mode of passion. But then it's later said that if we cannot stop our desires, so then if our desires are purified and we are in Krishna consciousness, then does our intelligence follow, or is it our intelligence also has to be purified alongside? And also, if intelligence comes from passion, can it be later transformed into goodness, or even like beyond that? Does our mind and intelligence be brought to Shuddha Sattva?
Yeah, Krishna consciousness, yeah, it becomes transcendentalized Krishna eyes, just like putting the rod into the fire. The rod becomes red hot, becomes just like Krishna eyes. So, yeah, in association with the intelligence of the mind, actually not associating specifically with the intelligence of the mind, but to utilize the intelligence of the mind to associate with Krishna Kata and Krishna consciousness, right? Right. Other than falling victim to the mind and falling victim to the intelligence, but taking control and control of the mind and the intelligence. And Krishna consciousness is not like desiring for one's own self, but desiring for Krishna service. You know, like, you know, I go down to make the offerings. I go pushpam, phalam, choyam. So, you know, if I happen to look, basically I try to make sure everything's arranged nicely, you know, or we don't look at the tray or look at the prasad or prepared prasad, you know, with our own desires to enjoy it ourselves, but that we're thinking that hopefully maybe Krishna will enjoy this. Hopefully the devotees will be so the devotees could be satisfied by this prasad. So if the Lord is satisfied, we can make it nicely. You know, use nice spices and things. You know, like you know, think about like, well, what colors should we dress the Lord today, or jewelry, or you know, like that, or desire to go there. Where you guys been going? I keep thinking it's the Nokia Center, but they changed the name of that place. There's got some big giant soccer event or something. You guys are going in Sankirtan or something, you know. So it's like going to this really cool place to through books, right? Yeah. So it's transferring our account to Krishna. You know what we desire. So if we want to hear some music, hear Krishna music, you know, or there, we've got dramas and plays. There's the Ramayana. I guess some new thing with Lord Nrsingadev. There's little Krishna. Like that. We hear Mahabharata. Your Prabhupada's lectures. Everything's it's all dovetailed. We're utilizing our senses, our knowledge acquiring senses, and our working senses, specifically in the service of the Supreme Person of Godhead, hearing about Krishna. So if you hear, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Okay, Krishna is the Supreme Controller, Ishvara Parama Krishna, and he has a bluish form, like the rain clouds. Yeah, Venam Kanvantam, he holds the flute, right? So visualize Krishna, he's holding a flute, right? With a peacock feather in his crown or in his hair, so the descriptions are there, they're given there, so we can visualize this, and there's more, as we continue to move on, there's more things to hear, to understand. It's what is it? It's I worship Krishna, Govind, the primary Lord, who's adapted playing on his flute with blooming eyes like lotus petals, head decked with peacock feather, figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his ever unique loveliness is charming millions of cupids or gopis, Lakshmis, like that. So. Oh yeah, and they're saying like applying this knowledge, so we understand that what we're seeing when we're looking around, it's a combination of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Exactly what Kapila Dev is explaining here in these verses, on the subtle science of the manifestation of the material elements, the senses, the sense objects, the actual subtle sense objects, the mind, the repository of the knowledge acquiring senses, and the motives of action. Yeah. So does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions, comments? Maybe we can end class there then. Okay.